This is a series of conversation with ChatGPT on the topic of cloud, DevOps, enterprise architecture, and digital transformation. I'll be asking ChatGPT a set of questions with prompts and share my thoughts and answers coming back from ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is quite a mouthful to pronounce. Let's give it a more enduring name. Let's call it Chat. So we're going to ask Chat the obvious question, what is the cloud? Let me go ahead and type that in. What is the cloud? Okay, and let's see the answers appearing. Wow, I'm pretty impressed. So I expected the Chat to talk about the geographical phenomena of the cloud, but no, it went straight into cloud computing. Somehow you know my preference, and the answers are pretty good. So let me highlight a few key points in the answers. Using a network of remote servers often hosted on internet, that's accurate. Instead of storing it on local servers, that's really the cloud. The answers also cover the benefits of the cloud, includes the ability to access data application from anywhere from the internet connection, the ability to scale up and down to meet changing demands, and also the outsource of maintenance to the cloud service provider. So that's quite good. In fact, NIST published a document that sort of described 5 essential characteristics of a cloud. Broad network access is one of it, which is equate to the part of ability to access data and application from anywhere. Resource pooling and rapid elasticity is the other two second and third characteristic. There's actually 2 more that's missing from the answers. On-demand self-service, essentially allowing developers to sort of provision their own infrastructures or use consumer a cloud to essentially self-service to request for resources and capacity. And the 5th characteristic is measured service. Essentially provide transparency and reports in terms of actual consumptions of the clouds. And of course, you're built according to your metered and built according to your consumption. But all in all, pretty good sets of descriptions from Chat. Chat also talk about the different type of clouds, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, and give a quick description of each. That's good. I'll leave it to you to read the answers. And also give some layman examples of cloud services, including online storage, backup solution, web-based email, which is something we're all familiar with, and also video conferencing, which is with the pandemic, everybody is familiar with the likes of Zoom and Teams. So all in all, I think I'll give Chat 3 out of 5 for the set of answers on what is the cloud of all the 3 types, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. I think people understand IaaS quite well. It's almost like, your entire computer that goes out to the cloud, and people understand the concept quite well, especially VMs and stuff like that. SaaS, people understand using an accounting package that's in the cloud, or email and whatnot, Gmail and whatnot, right? So people understand that PaaS sometimes can be slightly confusing for lots of people. So I'm going to ask Chat to give some examples of what are PaaS. Well, let me key that in. Hi, Chat. Can you give me some examples of PaaS? All right. Okay, so what we get from Chat are essentially 5 examples. So I think what I kind of like Chat response is Chat provide examples according to so the top 3 cloud provider. So for AWS, you give an example of Elastic Beanstalk, which essentially is a PaaS platform where all the developers need to worry about is write a piece of software, whether it's Node.js, on Python, and on Java and whatnot, and say, look, go deploy somewhere, and Elastic Beanstalk will sort of return you a URL, say, look, there you go, that's website. You do not need to think about where on earth is the servers, how is it being run, how is it managed. You scale up and manage that for you. So that's quite a good example. The example given for Azure is Azure Functions. And also app services. I think there are slightly different sets of feature, but I think that's quite good. Those are essentially PaaS services from Azure as well. For Google, of course, App Engine is the popular PaaS platform from Google in terms of deploying applications. So that's quite spot on. And the last, I like the 4th example, which is Heroku, Salesforce Heroku, one of my favorite. Besides DigitalOcean, Heroku is one of my favorite platform to go to. When I want to build a simple app, and all I need to care about is get my URL, where do I host my mobile or web application. So that's quite a decent example. The 5th one is Red Hat OpenShift. Lots of need. It's quite widely deployed, especially in some enterprise environment. So that's a good example as well. But it's really a container platform, which is slightly different from, I think, the first 4 examples. So unless you're a developer, you may not still fully get what's a PaaS. Maybe let's ask Chat, is there a layman example or analogy of what's a PaaS? So let's go ahead and ask Chat again. Okay, do you have a layman analogy of PaaS? And see what, let's see if Chat is creative. Wow, okay, not bad at all. So I was expecting the usual pizza example. If you do not know what's a pizza example, I'm going to give you some links on the video. But the chat gave a building example, which is quite good when say IaaS is almost like doing the entire infrastructure. PaaS is pretty much a prefabricated house that have everything built in. All you care about is decoration and furnishing the house. Which says everything's all included. Well, I think it's pretty good. I'm quite impressed. So that is definitely be a 4 or 5 for these answers from chat. So well done. I think chat is improving as you go along. No, the reason I didn't give chat 5 or 5 for the answers because there's one particular point I don't think chat is as accurate, but we'll come to that a bit later. Let's ask something, ask chat something fun. Let's see whether chat heard of the pizza example. Right. Have you heard of the pizza example? There you go. Wow. Okay, that's good, right? So, if you want, do read out the pizza example here. If not, do check out the link and provide. So, the reason I didn't, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't give chat a full marks for the earlier answer was the part on Azure function. I don't think it's as accurate that Azure function is a PaaS. Azure function technically falls into what we call serverless or function as a service category. So that's really a category of another level, so-called, if you like, another higher abstraction level versus a PaaS service. But let's ask Chat, what is serverless and how does that differ from PaaS, right? So there you go. What is serverless and how does that differ from PaaS? Okay, let's look at answers from Chat. So that's a good example. So maybe let's zoom into the serverless computing part. Serverless computing is often associated with use of function as a service, right? Most of the time, not all the time. Allow developers to write and deploy small piece of code called functions that executed as a small piece. That's what Azure function or in Azure and Lambda and AWS does. A small function gets triggered based on events or maybe time-driven activities and go ahead, execute a task, and then go to sleep after that. So you almost kind of pay for consumption during the time that the function is running. So that's really the next another category of services, function services within the cloud space. I think Chat does elaborate a bit more about the difference between the two and the similarity of both PaaS and serverless. Honestly, the difference is not really big, but I thought it's quite important to highlight the nuance between the two. There's actually a category of AAS, which is BaaS or BaaS. I'm not sure how do you really pronounce that, but BaaS, another category of as a service. Let's ask Chat, what's that? What is BaaS? Okay. So backend service is a type of cloud service that provide developers with a way to build and deploy tools, a range of pre-built cloud-based services and API. I think that's the key. Pre-built cloud-based services and API that can be used to add features such as user authentication, data storage, push notification, and analytics. Yeah, I think give examples about developers need not worrying about handling authentication. The backend service deal with that. And also examples of Firebase and Amplify and PaaS server. I'm not familiar with PaaS server, so I'm kind of familiar with both Firebase and AWS Amplify. So Firebase from Google is so for those who are new to maybe software development, here really say, for example, we'll build a React front-end website. Firebase is quite a go-to options for developers. It has API for authentication. Of course, Firebase itself is the database. It does comes with a real-time database that it can integrate it with to your front-end application as well. So that's pretty good response example from Chat on BaaS. Okay, so no rating this time. I think we'll go back on scoring all the answers. Okay, we cover a fair bit of topics. We talk about what's the cloud, the characteristic of a cloud, and the type of cloud services. Let's zoom into some kind of common topics that people ask me about the cloud. One common question being asked is about lock-in, right? It's the concerns about lock-in to a cloud service provider. And it's a valid concern given that unlike maybe you buy a piece of software for enterprise, it just provide you one thing. But once you go on the cloud, you get everything, right? Your entire so-called infrastructure and services that are all there. So it's a natural concern that people raise. Let's have a discussion with chat about is cloud lock-in a concern, right? Is cloud lock-in a concern? Let's see what chat have to say about this. Right. Okay. Okay. So the cloud lock-in is a term used to describe a situation in which a user becomes reliant on a particular cloud provider and find it difficult or costly to switch to a different provider. So I just want to highlight the words about difficult and costly to switch. If they build their application and so in a way that's tied to the features and capability of the cloud, or they're heavily invested in proprietary tools and services that are offered by the provider, which is quite common, right? A cloud provider wants to offer you more things that's better integrated to an environment, right? So people are concerned for a few reasons. They are concerned about the limit in terms of flexibility or choice, right? They can't take advantage of new features that's offered by other providers. There's a bit of candy shopping there, nature. If they're not happy with the current one, they find it hard to switch and take advantage of the pricing. That could be a concern, right? But let me just address all the points accordingly. I think in terms of new feature is valid. But the counterpoint I have for this is once it's like investment in maybe a particular operating system, right? So or database. You make a choice of one database. You don't want to be switching your database every now and then just because the industry competes on new feature, right? I think I can't believe over time the feature will sort of level up, be at the equal level, or you can accept most of the times you can live without some of the more fanciful feature from the other provider. Switch provider if they're happy with the pricing. I think it may not be as a concern. The reason given is the competitors the pricing can be quite competitive between the various cloud provider. There's always and a lot of times the pricings are published. Of course, you get different kind of discount because you're enterprise, but I'm not sure that you're in a situation where the price is not transparent enough that you can't switch. So I think they're very concerned, but again, organizations have to weigh out how valid are those concerns for you, right? For you to deploy a multi-cloud strategy. Now, what are steps that people can take to avoid cloud lock-in? That's quite good. We didn't ask the questions, but chat gave the answers. Open the API, apply a multi-cloud strategy, use cloud analytics tool, right? Make sure data is portable, of course, monitor the pricing. So valid points to do, because the question is, with all this, wouldn't it create more complexity? Let's ask chat, right? See, does chat knows, ever thought about this? Wouldn't these steps create more complexity, right? And let's see what chat had to say in defense. Right. So I think it does agree that there are complexity when managing multiple vendors and technology, like all things. However, they also can provide the benefits that you're looking for. There's of benefits, right? So I think it's a good set of generic sets of answers from chat. But I think let's read the last paragraph, right? Which I think the last sentence is quite important. It's important to carefully consider your needs and goals when deciding whether and how to use this strategy. So it's important to think about those strategy. Again, is to think about what's your needs and goal before go head on with whether a multi-cloud strategy and whatnot, right? But again, what are the consideration we need to think about for strategy? Maybe that's a good question to ask chat, right? What be one's cloud needs, goals, and strategy? Okay, and let's see what chat have to say about this. Well, okay, it's quite a long list of points. Business goal, right? IT requirements, regulation compliance, security and privacy, right? Cost, it's valid. Competitive interoperability between the systems and existing systems as well. Oh, it's quite good. I think chat does give a kind of broad key points to think about as you define your cloud strategy. What does it mean? Actually, important decision around how you deal with lock-in, how do you deal with a multi-cloud strategy? I think on the point of lock-in is quite important to what Chad didn't address here. Is really not to think lock in so much from a cloud service provider perspective, but about the different services. So when you sort of weigh out the pros and cons on leveraging on cloud service, not just think about, look, is it about AWS or Azure or GCP, but it's really about, look, do I is the IaaS a lock-in, which typically not, right? IaaS has is so portable that it's really not a lock-in. Our PaaS services are lock-in. Yeah, there's the higher benefits of PaaS because you don't need to worry about infrastructure because there's increased lock-in. So you invested into Aurora database, and maybe harder to switch for you to go to Azure Cosmos database, for example. So these are lock-ins. Surprisingly, things like maybe some of the things around PaaS around we mentioned earlier, like app services and whatnot. Well, there are specific features. The lock-in not so high because you actually own the software, right? So things around some of the PaaS or even function and services, the lock-in level may or may not be that high because your developers can essentially cross-skill and cross-train. So one of strategy that I would recommend people to think about is really how do you consider things like infrastructure as code, IAC, to provide a level of so-called isolation from the actual infrastructure itself, and then give you ability to train the developers or your cloud engineers or your DevOps team to be able to port across the different clouds. Okay, but it's good to maybe also hear from Chad what anybody who have been successful in their multi-cloud adoption journey. Okay, so maybe let's ask Chad that questions, right? Which organization have been successful in their multi-cloud strategy? Okay, let's see who are the big names there. Great. Wow, they're all big names. Okay. Netflix, Capital One. Wow, Capital One is 3 clouds, AWS, Azure, and GCP. eBay is on AWS, Azure, and GE is on AWS and Azure. So those are big brand names that have been successful in multi-cloud strategy. Again, word of caution is you may not everyone is a Netflix of the world, not everyone is the eBay of the world. Each organization have to consider the impact to resources, the impact to budget, right? As you invest in the multi-cloud strategy, as you go multi-cloud, the cost will goes up naturally because you have to invest on both sides of technology, but in terms of people, contracting, in terms of losing some level of efficiency. Are we willing to trade off efficiency and put in more money to give you that kind of risk protections, right, across different cloud service providers? So maybe let's talk about what are the pitfalls, right? What are the failures with multi-clouds, right? Let's not just look at the good stuff, but also what could be the potential challenge. Let's give a real direct questions. What are the failures with multi-cloud? Okay, cool. Thanks, Chad. So those are the points. Complexity, I think I mentioned that a bit earlier. As you bring more tools, there are definitely more complexity, compatibility issues. Again, sometimes software doesn't magically run on anywhere. People would have designed solutions that maybe leverage on cloud native services, be things like monitoring and logging. So piping a lot to somewhere in different service provider will be quite different in terms of nature. Integration challenges, that's quite true. Security and compliance, you have to build different sets of there are, I think in principle, different design for different cloud service provider. And therefore you have to develop different security policies or implementation of different security policy just because the cloud providers are different. Of course, cost management is another challenge because you have to deal with more invoices and bills with different provider. But that's pretty spot on, Chat. Okay, final questions for Chat. What the buzzword is hybrid cloud. Let's ask Chat about hybrid cloud, and does that reduce lock-in or just more complexity? Okay, there you go. So hybrid cloud for I think let's really answer instead of me explaining. So hybrid cloud is a cloud computing environment that combines on-premise infra with one or more public cloud. So it's a hybrid cloud model. On-prem and so-called the commercial or hyperscaler cloud environment. There are benefits in terms of flexible scalability of public cloud, while leveraging the control and customization of on-prem infrastructure. So if you have an on-prem infrastructure and you're migrating, I think most of the times people will move into a kind of hybrid cloud environment because you're not going to move everything from the on-prem environment to the cloud. I guess the question is more, do you want to continue to stay in this hybrid cloud model, allowing you to have control of some of this data? So that's an important question for individual organization to address depending on needs. You could have data that you're not, because of your risk appetite, you're not willing to move it into the public cloud environment. You want to keep it on-prem, but bear in mind, you don't get the benefits that we spoke about in terms of characteristic of the cloud. But that's give you, on the other hand, certain things, features, attributes you're looking for in terms of on-premise environment. Again, how it does again introduce a set of complexity you have to manage. How do you deal with integration and dependency of systems? If there's a failure, outage, whether it's on-prem or hybrid, how on-prem or in the commercial cloud, how can I switch the network traffic routings between the different places? How do you even need to design in additional different kind of security guardrails, because conceptually they are designed quite differently. So these are the things to kind of consider for the hybrid cloud environment. So I kind of like the conclusion that Chat gave is again to consider your requirements and plan your strategy properly in order to maximize the benefits and minimize any kind of potential challenges when you think about hybrid cloud environment. So I think that's quite a good conversation we chat. We talk about again, I think hybrid multi-cloud lock-ins. These are conditions you have to think through quite clearly in terms of your cloud transformation strategy. Every organization has own needs, but I think through that quite carefully. Got to weigh out the benefits. My advice for most people is start a journey with small steps, learn, experiment, learn along the way, and make a decision as you mature, and not to necessarily follow what everybody else is doing or saying. But I think you have to develop their own opinions about the strategy you can take for your cloud investment. If not, I hope you enjoy this chat with Chat. I'm going to hope to produce more content. I kind of enjoy this particular format. It's very enriching, and for me, just having this conversation with Chat, and I hope you enjoy this as well. If not, I see you next time in the next video. All right, bye.